Hi everyone, this is Mark, and welcome to another episode of the podcast. And in this episode, I'm going to be reading to you a poem, the first poem from my poetry collection, The Dreamer and the Dream, which was originally published back in 2015. And 2015 was a very inspiring time for me, you could say. 2014, 2015. Because in 2015, I got 3 books published. One was a very short book, which was a small collection of poetry that I wrote for someone at the time. But I also published my poetry collection, The Eternal Boy and The Dreamer and the Dream. And for so long, The Dreamer and the Dream, I always heralded as one of my favourite poetry collections that I published. It was a poetry collection that I gave to other people, and I said, this is, if you want to read some of my poetry, this is the book. Here you go. Here's a copy of it. But, subsequent years have gone by, and, I've written other poetry collections since, and it's very hard for me to pick a favourite poetry collection of mine, because they're all works by me. But yeah, so 2015 was a very inspiring, a very busy year for me. And as I say, at that time I was writing poetry, multiple poems a day, all the time. But it was a time when things were changing, I guess you could say. Things were beginning to change. I was losing touch with certain people. I was making new connections with others. So it was the end as well as the beginning for me, for certain things and for certain relationships, you could say. But so the poems of The Eternal Boy and especially The Dreamer and the Dream are poems which I wrote when I was, maybe you could call it my peak as a writer. I don't know, or as a poet. But as I say, the poems within The Dreamer and the Dream, they're poems that, as I say, I haven't read them for some time. And as I say, the point of these new episodes of the podcast, this journey through poetry, is for me to go back and reflect upon what I've written, and perhaps explain why I wrote those poems. So I started in the first episode with my first poetry collection, Poet of the Sphere. Then I went on to my second poetry collection, The Sound of Mark. Then my third poetry collection, The Eternal Boy. And as I said, in this episode, I'm going to be covering the first poem from my fourth poetry collection, The Dreamer and the Dream. And it was originally published in 2015, as I said, and republished again in its new preferred hardback version and form in 2024, along with the vast majority of my books. Okay, so I'm going to flick through and past the dedication page, past the obligatory quotation page, which is something that I introduced in, I believe it was The Eternal Boy. Because I don't think, so in starting with The Eternal Boy, I started including a page at the beginning of the book with quotes from, well, originally in The Eternal Boy, it was quotes from the author J.M. Barrie, who was the author of Peter Pan. And then subsequently, in every poetry collection that I got published, I included quotations from people who said things that resonated with me, and I included them at the start of every poetry collection because I thought that what they said and their sentiments echoed the message of the poetry within the poetry collections that they were included within. And yet again, just to reiterate once again, the poems within The Dream and the Dream were written by me at a time when things were different. I was different, but yeah. So let's go and flick to the first page, the first poem of The Dream and the Dream, and it is my poem Tenacious Me, which I do remember writing, I think, even though it was quite some time ago now. But I'm going to read it to you, and then I'm going to reflect upon it and what it says, because as I said, I haven't read this poem for some time, and it's definitely been some time since I wrote it. So without further ado, here we go. I don't give up easily. I don't let go quickly. I'm probably the most dogged person you will ever meet. I am steady in a crisis, and even in an earthquake, I do not lose my feet. I remember, I repeat, I think. I turn things over and over in my mind like dirty clothes in a washing machine. It doesn't bother me if it rains, spits, or pours down and soaks me from head to toe, because I know why it must rain on me and on everybody. Because I have seen what I have seen, and because I have been where I have been. It's raining right this second. The sky is full of clouds of light grey. It is a perfect day for you if you are a duck paddling in the water of a duck pond. The rain is temporary, and tomorrow the sun will come out, the blue sky will bless us, and the rain and our troubled thoughts will have been washed away and will belong to yesterday. Everybody has their share of mistakes packed away in the closet at the back of their mind, which do not often see the light of day after we have made them, unless we accidentally make the same mistakes again. Everybody has scars from the personal wars that they have been through, which we only show to a small trusted number of people who know us inside and out, and any explanation as to where, when, and why we came to acquire them we need not explain. I'm someone who learns lessons from life. My life, my experiences, other people's life, other people's hurdles. I'm someone who doggedly persists at something until I get it right. But I still know the difference between making things fit naturally and trying to completely fit a square inside a circle. I never lack confidence nor determination, and I will tirelessly work to make something as close to perfect as it can possibly be. I'm someone who wakes up every morning and wants to be the one someone and anyone can call on, and that, unapologetically, is Tenacious Me. And I can honestly say, reflecting on the words of that poem, that is definitely me. I am someone who remembers things, repeats things, tosses things over in my mind of things that I've done. I've made my share of mistakes. I do continue to learn lessons from life, and my experiences and my interactions with people. And I, most of the time, don't lack confidence nor determination. And I do work tirelessly to make something as close to perfect as it can be. But I, like everybody, am human. I'm tenacious, yes. But yeah, I am unapologetically human. And I've made my share of mistakes. But I do believe that I am who I was always supposed to be. And I have had to go through, live through, suffer through things in my life that I wish I hadn't have had to go through. But, life is about change. And we all change. Every person changes in some way, shape or form. However, there are parts of us that do remain the same, that are unapologetically us. And tenacity, my tenacity, my passion, my humour, the way I am, the way I think, what I do, is definitely me. And that is something that hasn't changed. And I'm really glad about that, to be honest. My interactions with people, certain people have changed, of course. My friendships have changed since I wrote that poem. And, the experiences of my life have changed me. Whether that's loss of certain people in my life, or having to adapt to certain circumstances that were out of my control. But yeah, I'm definitely still tenacious in many respects, and I don't give up easily. And if there's a fight to be fought, and I think that I'm right in participating in that fight, then I will do it, and I will carry on, and I will learn. I do learn from my mistakes, and I think it's important to do so. And one of the great things, one of the most interesting things about going back over my poetry, time and time again, rereading what I've written, I do think about who I was at that time when I wrote them, what I was doing, where I was, and then comparing that to who I am now and what I've been through since. And it's fascinating. I know most people don't get to experience that because most people don't write down the daily goings on or what they've done in a journal or in a diary like they used to. And I always think I don't write as much as I used to, as I said. But when I was writing all the time, and when those poems that I was writing eventually got published, it was like that I was publishing my own journal, my own diary entries for others to read. And that's why I always say that those poems, every poem within every poetry collection is a time capsule, a piece of a puzzle of the picture of who I was at a particular time. And but yeah, it's fascinating to go back and read things or see pictures of yourself from a certain time, because as I say, we all have the experience. We remember things, remember people, but most of our memories are seen through a filter, the filter of time, and they're always influenced by emotion, that I've discovered. And we try and we tend to focus on the things that have changed, the negative side rather than the positive, especially when you go through a breakup in a relationship. for example, you focus on what pushed you away from one another rather than what drew you together. You focus on what ended the relationship rather than how the relationship began, and how you felt in a relationship. You just tend to, you tend to have a negative, most of the time, you seem to have a negative opinion of the other person because things didn't work out the way that you anticipated they would at a certain time. And it's interesting to go back and reread my poetry and think about who I was back then compared to who I am now, and how I feel about certain things and certain people compared to how I did back then. But yeah, so I will continue the journey in the next episode of the podcast as I continue this journey through poetry. And the next poem will be taken from my poetry collection, The Rambler. And I have no idea what the first poem that was included in that poetry collection was, but you and I will find out that if you are to continue listening to this episode, if you continue listening to the next episode of this podcast, and you'll go on this journey of poetry with me, and yeah. But anyway, I think we'll leave it there for now. Just want to say thank you for listening. Hope you like what you heard, and I'll talk to you again soon.